we're going to dive into line plans and what that means and what those are and how to use them correctly. And then of course, whatever else you guys want to share and update. But in the meantime, you know, who's had victories since we've last spoken in general, and then who's had some victories regarding their product or services they offer since we last spoke?
Sold some granola, and my colleague to one of my colleagues, and she's like, love it. How can I get more? And I want to promote you if I can. I was like, yeah, okay.
That's awesome.
Always good. People like my stuff.
Who else? Who else has had some victories or product wins? Gail, yes?
So I haven't really updated much on the social media marketing stuff, but got the 3 interns, and they are gathering and setting metrics for measurable metrics for growth for my social media stuff based off of, you know, gathering it weekly and comparing things and figuring, my goal for them is to figure out what normal is. And I told them we're changing our language and we're not saying that things are failures or successes. We're saying things are normal, above average, and below average. And each failed post is not like, oh, that one, because they're kids. They'll go, oh, that was terrible. That one was awful. That one performed so bad, didn't it? I'm like, no, it was a learning opportunity. Let's see where it hit and where it didn't. Let's see what we can make some changes and see how these posts are performing so we can get more of like a control, like a more logical control based off of the conclusions that we're coming to. So that's super fun for me as a UI UX designer, and being outside of a field and actually working with, you know, brains that are hyper focused on something like social media data and changes across different platforms and testing and retesting. It's just like, it's bizarre. Like my mind is blown that they're doing this for me as a team, and it's not costing me anything other than time.
I love it. Anyone else want to share anything before we jump into the magical land of line plans? All right, so I am sharing, I'm going to drop a link into the chat. So in the chat is a link to the doc that we're going to be looking at. It will get posted in the community as well. So if you can't access it, let me know. I'll keep reposting it. And it should be available to anyone. So of course it says in huge red copy, you know, like copy this and create your own. And I recommend you guys do that now if you're making it or you want to do it as we go. So the purpose of a line plan is that you're able to track all the factors about one product or parts of a product, so that you kind of have like your product Bible. Like you have vendor codes, what factory it's from, pricing per unit, retail price, whatever special codes or name descriptions it has, when you've launched it. All those details can be tracked in a line plan. I made very minimal, rough line plans because what you put in them varies so much based on what you do. So when I was working in products before, we would have like all the way out to like C, D, whatever. We'd have columns because we were tracking so many things. And when you're looking at your line plan, you can use it in a lot of different ways. You can just track your costs. You can see costs and margins per product. You can see what your margin is. You can see what your weighted margin is. And so you can see all these factors. We talked before about how all products are a triangulation of factors. So in your line plan, you're always comparing the cost to you for a product versus how many units you want to buy or sell versus what the retail price is or the margin, right? So you keep moving those parts around until you get the equation that you want that is most beneficial to your business. So for example, if this was pins, for example, you know, I bet, Gail, that you might have a special code that your vendor knows each design by, and that's what you would put in column A. And then you would put the name of it, wherever the pin's full name description is, the name is here, the description would go next to it. You can also use your line plans to directly copy paste into Shopify. So that way, if you use a line plan for all your data, whoever your person is that uploads your see that I slipped, whoever's your intern, whoever is uploading your information into Shopify or whatever your other platform is, they can take your line plan because you've confirmed the line plan's correct and just do it all by themselves. So it allows you to delegate this information as well. Then again, if you say, what's the main colors, right? Because most shopping websites allow you to choose from a standard color palette. So you can put what the colors in here. If there's a size, one size fits all, you know, NA, or you actually put the specific size in. And then we're looking at what is the cost from the factory. Usually this is called FOB, right? So whatever it actually costs the factory, whatever you pay the factory to make that product, or however you're getting it. But then there's also shipping costs. So Gail, I'm going to pick on you today because your product is like quite easy for a line plan. Where do your pins come from?
They come from different manufacturers in China.
Okay, perfect. And then are you paying like air, or are you paying, ocean?
So the cost is, they quantify the cost of their shipping. I'm pretty sure it depends on the manufacturer. Mm-hmm. But then they incorporate all of the fees into one quote. So they don't say, here's how much we're paying for customs, here's how much we're paying for this. They just say it'll be $100 and something for shipping.
Perfect. So if you're getting something like that, where they're bundling all the prices to get to you, whatever it costs to get something to you is the landed price. It's landed on your door. Like, you can think about it that way. When you have the cost separated by the actual cost the factory wants to get, plus shipping, plus duties separate, as you get bigger and expand, it'll allow you to negotiate on these different terms. So if you could save millions of dollars going from air freight to ocean freight, then you might want to make that change. If you could save millions of dollars by switching from being made in China to being made in the US because of duties or taxes, you might want to make that move. The other thing is, like, if you don't see the base cost that the factory is charging you separate from the other costs, it can be hard to know when you're evaluating other factories what it actually costs. So just make sure you're comparing apples to apples. If it's an all-inclusive price, make sure you get another all-inclusive price. If it's broken out, make sure it stays broken out. And so that's what those three columns are. And then you finally have like a total cost. And I'm going to drop the, for new people who have joined, I'm just dropping in the link of the baby line plan template that I made into the chat. So then always tracking where the factory is. As you know, you have multiple factories, so you want to know like who you're making each pin with. If they have an MOQ, which is a minimum order quantity. And then depending on what type of business you have, you might want to have unit of measure. So like Allie, we were talking about your line plan, right? And how you need to know, because you're the one making it, you're the manufacturer and the retailer, you have to know unit of measure so that you can make sure that you know what goes into each piece or how it's tracked. And then you can add in things like total units. So this is the essential first list of what it looks like to track all of your things. But then we have to add in retail price. So again, I'm going to just pick on Gail. I'm going to copy this. Right, and we'll put pin number 1. Right, and let's just assume all the rest can stay the way it is, and we'll say someone in China. This would be a single pin, right? Because we're going to look at prices per individual pin.
Yes.
So if your retail price for your pin is $15, which again, I'm just making up numbers for the sake of this exercise. You know, how do you figure out what your margin is? And your margins are the amount of money that you keep for every item that you're selling. And this is really a really important factor because this is scalable. So knowing this is the biggest thing that you can move around to change how everything is set up and functioning. Let me just drop a formula in there. Okay, so the margin on this pin would be 62%, which would be awesome. So my perspective is that if you have an online business and you're selling direct to customer, having a margin over 60% should be your goal. So this means that of the and if we look at like the margin dollars, right, that's the margin in a percent, and then we have the margin as a dollar. No bandit. So for every $9.40 that you're keeping of your pin sale, that money now gets to pay for everything else other than the pin. So that's paying for staff, your salary, your marketing, your website, all those things. That's why the margin I recommend to be as high as it is. For larger companies, margins can be 5%, 30%, 45%. Most of the worlds I was in product, they were 50%. But when you're selling direct to a customer and you have so many costs, and this is the only way that you can make money, you have to make like the 60 or higher is where I recommend everyone should be. Yes, Gail.
So one of the troubles I've had is, two of the troubles I've had. One, when I'm quantifying the amount, the average or the estimated amount of profit, relative profit versus spend, so that margin in between, it varies because there's a couple that you hold on to for your own. There are certain ones that you want to use for giveaways. And then there is, what's the other? Oh, there's certain times in which you'll have sales at a certain percentage off.
Yep.
Right. So there's that factor that I have to say, okay, I'm only willing to do, factor in a certain percentage of my inventory and then do a breakdown of I can make this much to this much. And, you know, so there's a whole fake math that I'm doing in my head for that I, when I factor in individual batches profit. The other thing is, does the amount that you make afterwards factor in the fee that it is to get the money online? Like, for example, 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction for Shopify? Or does the initial price of the money that you actually see in hand, like, do you automatically take that off the top saying, I don't ever see this money? Or do you take that out of your profit for the line plan?
Perfect. Oh, sorry, Ben is very fired up. Let me give him a treat till stop barking. And you asked like 5 questions, so we're gonna break those down. Nothing wrong with that. It's just, that's how it works. Yeah, nothing wrong with that, how many questions you're asking. That's just the reality of all those questions. So I'm going to try and remember all of them. So I'm going to go backwards. When it comes to what you get charged for fees for whatever platform you're selling on, I count that separate. That should be another column in your line plan. But when you're looking at your initial margins, don't include that in this initial margin conversation because it's a factor of the platform you're using. So it's going to be a separate conversation than just the product itself. You want to be able to evaluate on your line plan first, what's your margin based on all the costs to get the product to you and what you want to sell it for. Because those are decisions that you're making about what factory you're using, how expensive your product is, what retail price it needs to be. The service fees for using a platform, even if it's PayPal, those are costs that need to go into the category of like the sales. And so yes, you need to track them. And they're more about your net cost than your initial gross margin. So some of my clients put a column in here with those fees, and they put it after the original margin column, and then go from there. So that's how you can use that. And then can you repeat your first question as well about the margin?
So if I sell a pen for $15 and I spent, I'm just throwing a number out there, $3 on it, and there is a margin of that amount, I will sell a certain amount for $15, but there's another amount that gets discounted,
Yes, yep.
based off of campaigns.
Yep, so if you jump, so what I didn't explain, I should have done this when we started. In this line plan example, there's 4 tabs. There is a product cost sheet, which is just calculating the cost of your product. And then there's a retail line plan. If you look at the retail line plan, I'm dropping your product example we were using in here right now, but you'll see that I've added, I'm gonna remove this 10% because no one needs it. You'll see that I added minus 10%, minus 15, minus 25, minus 30. And that's what you need as a retailer, because if you offer 10% off for your email, 10% off is suddenly your real numbers, not the first number. But if you don't offer those things, you have your original margin. So having the 10, 15, I just picked every 5 to 10 increments. That shows you the full width of how low can you discount that individual item before you break even or lose money. So these are preset. You can know per item how far you can push it. And you can do this if you have an e-commerce store or if you have a retail store, right? So, I'm thinking about you, Valerie, right? Like if you had all your makeup products in a spreadsheet like this, you could know how far you could push your maximum sale. And then you could also see by category which ones need to only have a 10% discount versus ones you could go deeper on. And this will show you all of it. So I copy pasted and I totally messed it up. So I'm just going to start over again because we'll fix it in here. You'll also see here that in column L, it just says landed price, which is all of those things combined. So I'm just going to make it clear and insert those other columns. Right. So we have FOB price, which is factory price. Average shipping, taxes. And then your landed price is the sum of all of those. The other thing to consider when you have a retail-based business is packaging buffer. So we need to get an average cost for whatever you put in the box to go to a customer. So what's your average cost for stickers or tissue or anything else that goes into it, because we don't want those costs to get lost, but we just want an average. So again, this is not shipping costs yet. Those aren't in here yet, but you do want to factor in what do you need to like finish the product before you can give it to a customer. So this could be tissue and a bag if it's in store. It could be tissue and like a sticker pack or a note card if it's in a box. These are things that you can kind of average out because they would be, they're not per unit, like not per product, but they're per purchase. So how do we make sure a little bit of that is being captured in here too? Essentially, you want to move as many of the costs that are specifically related to the products that you're selling into your line plan so that when you get that 60%, it can cover all the other things that are different decisions to make. Is this making sense? Am I losing anyone? Okay. So I would encourage all of you that have products or retail stores to fill out this doc so you can see everything. You have like your master tracking list of things. On the product one, I also include a launch date in column A, so you know when it was first released into the market. And that can help you track life cycle of things. So if you've had a bag or a pin out in the marketplace for a year, 6 months, 1 month, how long do you want it to be out there? Because we have to look at our products into, are they seasonal or are they an evergreen item? So some products you're going to have out there forever. Like if Allie has a classic black bag, I'm sure it would be there forever and ever, and it will never change unless she chooses to change it. And then if, Brisket says hi. And then if you have other items that are like the crazy prints you were doing, Allie, stuff like that, those would be seasonal and they're not going to be there forever. Those are items that you would put on sale. The black bag, you may never put on sale. So that's also why knowing when you launch something or put it out into the marketplace matters, so that you can track how long it's been there, and then also know when to trigger a sale to get rid of your inventory. Development type means like how much work do you need to do to create that product. So if it's brand new, you have to design it, you have to source it, you have to test it, you have to do all the steps in product creation. Whereas if it's just a new color, then you don't need to do all those steps, right? You're just making sure that the color is fine and good to go. So having different development types that work for your business will make sense. Like Courtney, if she's doing a new recipe, that counts as a new development because she has to do the whole thing from the beginning. And doing a new granola might be different than doing a new product like a peanut butter. Right? So there's going to have different product creation timelines. Category and type, you don't need to have if you don't want them, but as you grow and add more products and get bigger, you're going to be really happy that you put these categories in, because then you can see how are your product categories or types comparing to each other and how are they performing individually. So you were asking the day, Gail, about like adding in this like backpack. Have a different category. It's a different type, right? It's no longer a pin. It might still be accessories, but now it's a backpack. Or if it's not an accessory, maybe it's bags, right? So you can separate those things out. One of the biggest headaches that I know Miranda's experienced and Allie's experienced is when people don't properly organize their products from the beginning, it messes everything up for the rest of the life of the business. And that's because you have to go back in and recalibrate everything, and it's impossible to capture all the historical things. Now, most of us don't have thousands of product types, so we can fix things if we have to. But if we're planning for ultimate success, you may. And if you can categorize your stuff now and think big picture, you will be happy you did it in the long run. What else is in here? SRP is standard retail price. And then at the end of this line plan, I also put like added to Shopify, the weight, the international shipping code, and the country of origin. So you have everything you need to complete your Shopify upload. Another thing you can add sometimes too, because this becomes a database and a project tracker. So you can keep adding columns to this. So make these fit for whatever works for you. So Gail, you're asking, is there a way for the line plan to automate all the factors?
I thought maybe I wrote that a little bit weird. The question is there a way for, so you're writing in all these different factors, right? Including like the category. Is there a way for your line plan to have a front-facing page that automates all that stuff? So you can say the average price of something set with these things is this much.
Yes. So yes, it has to do with how Google Sheets or Excel works. You can always create a summary view where you're linking it to other things on other tabs or even other documents. In the line plan, like you can make category and type and development type. You can make those all drop downs if you want to, so that people who are working the line plan have less choices. All the questions you're asking are leading to why people end up using product PLM systems. Raise your hand if you hate PLM systems. So anyone who's ever worked in a PLM system, they're usually ugly and horrible. And I think people who make them have never touched a product in their life. So one of my clients, her fiance makes platforms, and I'm like, please have him call me so we can make a real product platform. it makes me insane. They never do everything you want, and they just cause so much extra work. I think half of us on this call were employed because the system couldn't do its full job. Like, we could have automated everything, but we were stuck doing spreadsheets all the time. So yes, you can automate everything. And so once you've maxed out how much you can have filters and formulas and automations in Excel or Google Sheets, that's when you realize you have to move to a product line management system. If you use Shopify, Shopify has a lot of plugins or the apps that do this work. So one of them is bundles. There's inventory management ones. There's all sorts of other things. Tell Erin we got to talk, Natasha. So you can do a lot of those things in Shopify as well. But I always start with a spreadsheet, and I think I always will, because you have full control here to manipulate it and do whatever you want inside of it. So whatever customizations you want for your business, you can put them in here. At the end of the day, it's a list that you can add everything up and summarize things and do a lot of the work for you, but it really keeps it simple. So Courtney, you're asking about the Shopify upload. You can take your line plan and you can upload it into Shopify if you follow the matching list that they give you, so that all your columns match their import list. And then you can take your line plan and update it, the whole thing. So if you want to refresh your whole Shopify or update costs or update factories, you can do it via an upload.
And what's the benefit of having it through Shopify? Just everything's in one place, or?
Well, to me, Shopify is always separate from your line plan, because your line plan you can work on and manipulate and keep adjusting. But knowing that you can upload it into Shopify and that's where the data lives, where you can export reports, that's what's helpful. Because Shopify has so many good reports. It can tell you your average order, average cost. It can even tell you inventory levels if you have one-to-one inventory. So there's a lot of benefits to moving this data from a spreadsheet into Shopify, because it allows you to delegate and automate a whole bunch of things that you might want to know.
Okay. Yeah, Wix does some, I don't know if you can upload things to Wix, but they have a lot of exports and analytics. But the export sheet is like a CV, whatever, and it's just like
CSV, yeah.
Maybe it's impossible to read. It's like this little squares and lots of numbers. The designer in me wants to be like, no.
Yeah. There's so many options out there, but I always keep coming back to Shopify for the ideal online retailer, because there are ways to make it more beautiful and more effective, because there's all these people that you can hire to help you do that, where it looks like a fully robust website. Like, you don't have all of the freedoms like you would in a Squarespace making your store in Shopify, but there are people who know how to do that and then come in and do it all for you and set it up. When I had the Powerful Ladies store, we did everything in Squarespace, and then the store was in Shopify, because it was just so much easier, because you can do the shipping, everything else through it. If you're somebody who is selling on Etsy and Shopify and Amazon, which if you're not doing it right now and you have a product, you should be, there are other platforms like ShipStation that can take all of your data for inventory and sales and put it into one hub. Look at some of these questions. So does the power of a line plan make sense to you guys, and like what you can do with it? Okay. So Allie, I know that you're somebody who's seen line plans and used them before. What can I answer for you that would take your line plan to the next level, or what do you think you don't know how to put in your line plan right now?
I feel like just going through this and seeing even the example is helpful, because I'm looking at what I sent you a couple weeks ago and I'm like, I forgot so much. I didn't think about the packaging. I didn't think about like the binding that's in the bags, just those kinds of things. And really trying to figure out like how I can either start paying myself or someone else. So while it felt like I had a giant margin, once you start factoring in actually getting paid to do this, it's like a whole nother thing. And like, yeah, it's my passion project, but nobody else is going to want to do that, So, so yeah, I think it's already helped a lot. I've already made like a ton of notes, and then I was just finally like, copy Kara's spreadsheet, copy it, put it, all my stuff in it. So I think that's going to help quite a bit.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
The other thing that might help you as well, ay caramba, Bandit today.
I think they're just barking for treats at this point.
He is for sure.
You've got them trained.
Yeah. He's the only one barking, by the way.
Oh.
So the first tab, the product cost sheet, is a place where you can add up all the costs for one product and then take the total cost before shipping or taxes and move that into the line plan. So the intention of this, if you look at the original version way I had it, this said something else up here, but I'll just remove it for now because it doesn't make sense. So right now, these are all the things that would add up into one t-shirt. So you can take this section and like make another one down here. So you have like t-shirt 1 and then t-shirt 2. And then that way you're doing a bunch of the math for one product in advance to get your total cost. And then these total costs are what you then move into the other line plan where it says like FOB price or total cost. Does that make sense for you guys who are doing both products and you're manufacturing and selling at the same time? Gail?
Can you help me understand that? Because I think that might be closing a gap for me, but I'm trying to figure that out.
Yep. Okay. So let's just do an example. So we're going to do teal teacup pin number 1. What are all the costs that go into your specific pin?
For the manufacturing costs?
Yeah, to make one pin. Yep.
It is just the cost of manufacturing and the cost of shipping to start from making one pin.
When you get your pins, do they come with a backer and are they in a poly bag?
They are in a poly bag with a backer. What I do is I reback them. So there's the cost of the backing card, the new poly bags, and that's the base cost, and then it goes into shipping stuff. So the bag to ship it, but those, yeah. So just to get it as a workable product, it's got a backer cost and the poly bags.
Yep. I'm just guessing what these things cost right now. From when I last had to do a pin, right? So if you get your backing card and your poly bag here in the US, you're not going to have taxes, but you might have a shipping cost like for 1,000 of them. So maybe it's like 1 cent to divide, right? Like these things, or maybe it's 5 cents for a backing card to like get them all shipped to you if you're doing them in bulk. So that's what those costs would be. So now you know that your pin, the one pin is $5.11, which you can then put in the line plan, and then you would add any other costs that you have. So you want to use this product cost sheet that's summarizing all the parts of what you're making so that you essentially calculate your own FOB or total cost. And if you don't like this formation where they're all underneath each other, you could literally have a tab for every product if you wanted to. Because different products are going to have 80 million things included in them. Whereas like if Allie was doing her bag, like, again, I'm going to guess, but come on. Is it 3 L's? Okay.
Yes.
I was getting like hallucinations with like how many L's there were in the thing the other day. So she would have like zipper, you're gonna have thread, if I can spell it right. You'll have like material 1, material 2. What else do you have? Handles? Or was it woven?
Webbing.
Webbing. Anything else I missed for your bag?
I did just realize that we do like a vinyl iron-on thing. So like the vinyl label cost sticker thing, I forget. Heat transfer, I think is what it is.
Okay. So that's like the total cost for your bag. And then you would have your labor too.
Mm-hmm.
So you might not have shipping or taxes for these things if you're buying it yourself. But if you're going and buying it yourself and it's not arriving at your house, you know, you could include like 5 cents for gas or something. You can choose. But essentially you'd have all this, and if it takes you an hour to make a bag and it's like $15 an hour, then I think it's like what, 23?
I think so. I think we said an hour and a half. I've been timing every single piece of it.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm at like an hour and just over an hour and a half.
Yeah. I'm just making things up, right? But
Okay. Well, I still like that margin's still okay. I'm not mad at it.
yeah. So if you're, you know, the bag right now would be $34 based on my crazy math.
Gotcha.
So you can start to see how much that costs individually, and then that cost is what you drop in to the landed price. So if I do a row for Allie's bag, 34.47, and if you're charging $50 for it, again, just making up numbers, and this formula is incorrect. 1 second.
I love that margin. Beautiful.
Yeah, so you're getting 31%. So there's definitely room in there to move it around to get it closer to over that 60% line.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the product cost sheet in the beginning. It's like a rough version. There's a retail line plan. I also made one for food, knowing that Courtney was on here and that we had, like, she and I have worked on this separately. I just used briskets biscuits as an example. You're welcome. And then moving into the other category here, which is what do you do if you have a service? So services need a line plan just like tangible products do. And this is just an example of how, like in the coaching business that I do, you can buy like 3 options: a full year, a half year, or a 12-pack. So I'm looking at I set a cost for those, but I have to do it starting with what goes into it, because it's not just my time. I start with what I want to make an hour, right, to like gauge it. Then I have to factor in all the platforms I use, any driving costs. Like there's other things that go into providing this service that I have to make sure are included. Otherwise, even if I wanted to make, what did I put in here? Something crazy like $1,000 an hour, right? So if I wanted to make $1,000 an hour, I'm not actually making $1,000 an hour because I missed costs. And so when you look at it, the margins on here are actually not that high when you factor in how much it costs me. Like I have to pay myself, and then I have to pay for all the platforms that I would use. So you don't need 60% if you're doing a service because you're keeping all the profit usually. But if it's like dry cleaning, for example, if you're a photographer, you have to count up all your hours, all your equipment, the apps you use. If you had an assistant, all these things go into it. And most people are not putting all the cost in, which is why they're ending up with not enough money. So a lot of working and not a lot of money.
Where do you factor in the cost for things like when you start handing things off, it starts to get more expensive? I explained to somebody, if your ratio is here, you start to get an opportunity to earn more money. This is like how much money you earn, but the cost of things goes up with it, right? So if I'm having someone deal with all my packaging and she charges a receiving fee and then a packaging fee and then a fulfillment fee, where do I put all those things in when it comes down to factoring the average cost of how much I make per item on a line plan?
So I wouldn't put those things into a line plan because those would go more into the business budget, which I think is on the calendar for like October. We're talking about that stuff. We can pull it up if you guys want to, but on your business budget, there is a line item for like cost of goods sold, right? What you're spending on products. and what you're spending for all your apps. So when we look at your business budget, we're not looking at things at a per unit or per product level. We're looking from the top down. So how much you spent on products, you can just summarize any money you gave to a factory in the year or in the month. You can also, there's a lot, we separate shipping because shipping can be a different factor, but then there's a whole area I do of like, here's all the apps we use. It's shocking how many apps we probably all use for a business today. Sorry, 1 second. Dan's just having a hard day. He was just doing some splits on the ground, yeah. So when you're about to be 17 as a dog, so there's good days and bad days. So all of those things I would put into your business budget, where you can track what you're forecasting and what your actuals are to see where's your margin going, where's your cost going. Because you can also look at profit margin in like a regular P&L, like profit and loss statement, but that's at a net level, like all in, right? So if you're making $1 million, but you're spending 900,000, you know, your margin's not going to be great at a corporate level. So that's where you can kind of see it at a different perspective. This line plan is simply to say, how do I get to 60% margin so that I know I have most of the money going into all those other categories. And so the line plan is built specifically to make decisions about retail price per item, how much you want to spend per item in getting it made, how many units you want to buy as a result. Because the next level of this line plan is looking at your weighted margin, which is where you literally take the margins for each item times how many units you think you're going to sell to see what is your overall margin. Because every item is not going to be 60%. It's not possible, right? Because some products will cost more to make, some products will have more competition. Yeah. So that's in that space. So at the end of the moral of the story for line plans is, if you're treating your service or your tangible product like a product, make sure you're including all the costs that you have to do to provide it in this space. So provide it means the cost to get it just before it goes out the door. So what are all the costs to get it onto Shopify, right? Like not leave, because we don't want the Shopify cost in there, because you can always trade platforms and negotiate that rate or it can go down. But everything else to get it ready to give to someone. Same with your services. So if you need to use the product cost sheet to do the full service cost analysis, do it. You know, like, you know, I'm thinking about, you know, Natasha in PR, like she has whatever platform she needs to do her business. She has her website and Gmail and all those things. And you can put them into your service, but they're not tied specifically to it. So like, what are the ones you specifically need? You know, one of my clients is a fundraiser. So she has a database that she uses just to track donors. That would go 100% into her service line plan because she needs it. Yeah. Does that make sense? So that's how you can separate what's an overhead cost, meaning that you use it on for many parts of the business or for the business just to exist, versus you need it to provide your specific service or product.
Kara, would that include like subscription services like Thrive Collective, or like I'm in 2 other like PR societies? Would that include those as well?
So I would put the memberships in your budget under apps and services, because you definitely want to include those as tax deductible items. But when it comes to being able to provide your specific service, I wouldn't put it in there. Like when I look at what I put into my coaching specific services, I put HelloSign because I need that to sign the contracts to provide it. I include, what's another one? My Acuity, my scheduling app, because I have to have it to schedule that specific service. So if it's specific to delivering the service that you're providing, yes. If it's an overhead item, I would leave it in the budget, and that's what get paid with the margin that you have.
Okay, so like MailPlane is like a service for Gmail, and obviously I live in email, so like that would be included as well.
Yeah, because you get to decide. Like, so just like tangible products have a cost of goods sold, like what you need to sell the goods. In services, you have costs of services. So anything that you need to provide your service, you can justify as a cost of goods sold or cost of services. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's helpful.
You're welcome. Questions, thoughts? Is this helpful? Are you
I have
guys
a quick question, Kara.
Mhm.
Does anything about the service line plan change if you're doing like a recorded class? Because like those expenses of you creating it
Mhm.
don't keep occurring. So how do you figure out how to price the class once it's done?
Yeah, great question. So when you, especially if are you talking about an online or a live class?
Online.
Okay, perfect. So an online class is really great because 99% of the costs are all before, right? It's pre-release. So the platform, recording it, all those things, it doesn't matter how many units you sell, the cost is fixed. So the costs are the same, so you can bundle all those and you know what it costs you to run it. And then you have separate per student costs, right? So if you use Teachable or Thinkific, every month there's a cost to use it, and sometimes they charge you an extra $1 or 10 cents per student, if depending on what plan you're in. So I would separate the fixed costs from the per student costs, because those costs scale, and look at, and that would be my first separation. And then when it comes to what you want to charge for a class, the way that I look at it is, how much money do you want to make? What can you charge per student competitively? And then what did it cost you? And so instead of thinking about just what it costs you, you can think about what do you want to make per student back? Because we should assume that part of what makes evergreen products awesome is they can be sold into infinity. So at what point do you want to have your break even point? Like, do you want to break even after 20 students, 40 students? And then where's your break even point? And then what's your sales goal number 1 point? And then after that, it's all just like money. So once you get past your break even point, you only need to worry about covering the recurring or per student costs, and the rest goes in your pocket. So I look at it in stages of, I need to sell this many seats to like cover the costs. And then after this, I'm making profit. And after this, we're maintaining, it's paying for itself. Like it's fully sustainable. So you separating them out that way, I would just still lead with what makes sense from a student perspective. How many have you had in the past? If it's the first time, how many think you can get? And then you can play with it. All pricing, no matter what it's for, services, courses, products, they should be one of the things that you're constantly testing and manipulating, because demand will change, supply will change, prices just go up for things. Like, you look at what happened to COVID, and almost like everything has had a price increase. So you can start with one price and move it. The other thing to think about for an online course is, just like the 10, 20, 15 that we looked at for individual products in retail, look at costs if you're going to bundle it with things or do a sales push where you only market the course at certain times throughout the year. So you might realize that, like, all right, the total cost of the course was $20,000 to make, and I'm going to do a marketing push 4 times a year that I'll spend $10,000 on. So how much total a year do I have to recoup from this class? Because once you make it, that's the product cost, but there's still going to be marketing and selling costs to keep it being filled and rejuvenated. So you can do it that way too. Like, all evergreen courses have a lot of options. So a lot of it comes down to you. And with whenever you're selling a knowledge sharing product, this is peeking into the course that's coming out, you can really charge whatever you want, because you just need to make sure that you're clear on the benefits and the value, and then communicating that. If you think your course is worth $2,000, then tell people why it's worth $2,000 so that they get it and they still see it as a value for them. Because when you're selling a course, you can offer bundles and bonuses and discounted prices, and I mean, you can have different price tiers. You can have installment plans. Like there's so many choices that you can play with those and see which ones cause people to jump on it as well. That help at all? That was like so many answers.
No, that was perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else, guys? Yeah, Gail.
So at times there'll be an item that you purchase for the purposes of promotion.
Mhm.
How do you factor that in on the relative value of that item? So there's this design that I give out for free for 6 month people who've been patrons and subscribers for 6 months, but they get it for free. It still costs me money. Or maybe I'm having a sale, it's a huge promotional sale, and the first 50 people will get something for free.
So in tangible products, there's multiple stages of analysis that you could or should be looking at. You have the line plan, which you use when you're building something and pricing it and getting it started at the beginning. Then you have a buy plan that's determining how much you're going to buy. And that buy plan has a different number on it than the line plan does. The line plan is just what you're going to sell. The buy plan is units for marketing, giveaways, photo shoots, plus what you're going to sell. So your buy plan units might be 5,000, but your line plan units might say 450 or 4,500, because 500 you're going to give to influencers or something else. Then the cost of any products that you don't sell go into marketing or sales, whichever category you want to put them in, because you didn't sell them, so they're a marketing expense at the end of the day. And if you use them in a photo shoot, they're a marketing expense. There have been many battles at the large companies about who's paying for products, because marketing never wants to pay for the products they photo shoot. Yeah. And so even deciding if you're going to give things away, you know, you have to choose, because it's going to come out of your marketing budget. So you have to keep looking at things bottoms up and tops down, which is how like going from a line plan to a budget really helps. There's also, you know, when you think about a buy plan, you also need to include potential shortage or loss, because sometimes you might get a pin back and one's bent, or, you know, they might get lost in the mail. Like somehow you asked for 500 and they shipped you 459. Like all the time. It's so annoying. Why is there like one like odd number of things missing? So you always have to count them when you get them. So I always have a buffer, because if you bought only what you needed to sell, you would never have enough product to make the money that you actually want to. Yeah. Why are you shaking your head, Gail?
No, I have a perspective in my head, terribly heavily outlined, but not written down, line plan for things separate from my shop than I do for things separate for Patreon rewards. Patreon has a very narrow profit margin. So because of that narrow profit margin, what I do is I order so close to the amount that I need to fulfill that I don't have much extra. And there's like, it's a really complicated reason why Patreon is a good thing. It's a subscription service. So they charge them every month, and then I send them a reward every month. But the cost for that reward versus the cost in the shop is substantially low.
That tells me that you're not charging enough for your Patreon tiers.
I'm really not.
Because Patreon needs to be treated like an income stream, just like your store. So it has to be margin smart and financially smart. Otherwise, tell them to go shop in your store. Like, they're not helping you out by being a Patreon that way. Patreon ideally should be set up where you give them something that costs you nothing. So, you know, they get, you know, can they get videos of behind the scenes? Can they get, you know, products that you once a quarter, you give them a pin versus every month? Like, how do you set it up where they get what they want versus it's not another retail outlet?
Right. So the business model in my target market, what their expectations are, is to receive a pin every month. but then receive a PIN plus. So I keep those costs down to a specific budget. I say, what can I buy with this amount? And then I understand that the profit margin is substantially lower for delivering them these items than it would be to give them in the shop, right? So, but at the same time, there's no way to factor in pricing. They just started factoring in shipping. They just started factoring in tax. And if I was going to keep it at a competitive rate to people who are also doing it, people just like me, not taking this class, they don't charge crap. I'm like, it took me forever to even consider going into Patreon because I'm like, how do you guys make any money off of this? How does this not cost you money?
They're not. They are absolutely not, because they're not in a different business than you, right? Like they're not. So
in the same business, exact same business as me, paying the exact same amount, giving these items, and I'm going like if I reshipped an item that got lost, it has officially cost me money.
So this is kind of what we're going to get into in that workshop in 2 weeks on Friday, the 20 whatever. I'll pull it up correctly so I can. The workshop is on Friday, next Friday, the 21st. Yeah. So it's next Friday. And in that workshop, we're going to be looking at all the products that you actually have, right? Because what you're telling me right now, Gail, is you have your retail store, you have your events, you have your Patreon, and we need to sit back and look at them like, are they all worth your time? Because each income stream that you add to your business should be adding value, not stress. Otherwise, like, why are we doing it? And so how do we either get those products and services to all be making the margin that they should, or how do we drop one because it's more work than you're getting back? And I bet you haven't factored in the number of hours that you contribute to each of these sections, because once you do, that's when you're going to realize, like, why does it feel so hard all the time? Because you're not factoring in yourself, most likely. Yeah.
Trust me, the only reason why I'm not elaborating is because I could talk about this for days.
Yeah. Yes. So we have 1 more minute. Anyone else have a question or comment for today? Was this helpful? Yeah? Okay, awesome. So like I said, we'll put this cheat sheet into the category, the topic for product creation. And because these need to be so customized, like, play with it and make it your own. So, what I use for our products is very similar to the retail line plan. I had a few extra columns. When it comes to all my coaching services, I have like a crazy, beautiful minds matrix that I did not dare put in here because you guys would realize what a crazy person I am. Because you can also use it to evaluate, like, differently at the time, different prices, different combinations. So as long as you're starting with all your costs, what you do after that, you're going to be already ahead of the game. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Have a beautiful Thursday, and I will see you on Monday.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.